Okay, so welcome everyone to our, I think this is the second last seminar in Digital and Public Humanities organized by the Center for Digital and Public Humanities of the Department of Humanities at Foscari University, organized by Stefano Dallaglio and Deborah Paci. Thank you for this wonderful series. Before I will introduce you now to our today's speaker, just to mention this series is being recorded and published then on YouTube in a couple of days. So everyone is very much invited to participate in the discussion following the presentation, but be aware that you then will be visible on our YouTube channel. It is now for me a great pleasure to introduce you to our very own Tiziana Mancinelli, research fellow, factotum and all-round DH specialist at the Venice Centre for Digital and Public Humanities. She has been awarded a Ph.D. in textual scholarship in digital humanities from the University of Reading for her study on Attilio Bertolucci's La Camera da Letto. She gained a vast experience in modeling, developing digital editions and projects at several digital humanities centers, such as the Cologne Center for eHumanities, where she developed software for the study of ancient magic curse tablets. Now at the VeDPH, she's working on and involved in many, almost every project at our center and at the department and beyond. BFlow project on medieval bilingualism, Marco Polo, text documents and archives for Renaissance women writers from the theater history, art history. She initiated and is leading the Aldina project on natively digital literary archives of Italian authors and writers. She's teaching and organizing countless workshops and laboratories for our master program in Digital and Public Humanities. The call has just been opened now for the new cohorts, the second generation of Digital and Public Humanities students. And just recently she published a book co-authored with by Elena Pierazzo, Che cos'è un'edizione scientifica digitale, what is a digital scholarly edition. And here and today she will be talking about everything you need to know about digital scholarship. So from modeling to publishing digital scholarship in practice. Tiziana, thank you for coming here. So you're always here with us, and we are looking very much forward to an exciting presentation. The floor is yours, and I hope, you have to turn on the phone.
No, I was just checking if I had everything in place. So thank you so much, Franz. And I will share my screen. Yeah, I start presenting. And so, first of all, I would like to thank Stefano and Deborah for the opportunity to speak here today and organize the seminar for the Venice Centre for Digital and Public Humanities. I was very afraid of this talk because I don't really like being recorded or being online, and especially dislike the thought of being on YouTube forever. We are living in a time of the rise in the use of the web. And in particular, during the pandemic, there is an increase in the production of content. And the new trend is to record seminars and publish them online, which has advantages and disadvantages. We assume that our data will be there forever. Are we really sure that YouTube will be there forever? I mean, we have the idea that our data will be there and the big corporation can actually store our data, but probably won't be there forever. I mean, every platform will be used, and any platform on internet is at risk of not being forever there, and the obsolescence is one of the main issue of our digital data. We have the idea that our data will be there, but if we don't rely on platforms, we can save and store videos on our clouds. Yes, also we can do that, but videos are particular kinds of data and they are heavy. So if we organize 15 seminars per year, that's what we have done so far. So last year and this year, how many videos will we have? What size do they have? What kind of typology of data what kind of formats? How many hard disks? How much a hard disk do we need? Also, how can we organize those data in order to better retrieve it later? Sorry, I know. When I think about data, I cannot stop thinking of all these things. There are mainly aspects related to data management. Also, there are aspects that we are really they're really close to our digital humanities projects. Like, for example, the fact that data, when I think about data, I cannot stop thinking of counting, for example, or think about better organizing and better representing them for sustainability. So we are making a quantity of data for born digital archives. And born digital archives are actually, there should be part of a section of those born digital archives should be probably some in the field of digital humanities. So what we're going to tackle today is also the issue of sustainability, as we might know that is one of the main issue of data and transmission of knowledge. We are great at creating digital content, but we are lousy at managing it. And this is a phrase in the book of archives edited by Aaron Parcel and published in 2019. So in this book, there are many aspects to manage born digital archives. But data are actually, I mean, when we talk about data in humanities or data in digital humanities, which is the same thing for me, we have to think that we have in the digital humanities realm, we have built scholarly projects and born digital materials over the years. If we go back during the 80s, for example, many of the scholars of the DH scholarly projects developed at the time are now lost. So how can we do it? We can access many important projects, mainly those that are aligned by our scholarly projects after the second half of 19th century with the web. So as we can see, we have a timeline. We also have a timeline of projects, so the projects that are depending on technologies, and technologies are software and hardware. So in my experience, I have worked in digital editions projects mainly, and take great pleasure in breaking down text, reassembling them, and at different stages of the editorial process. But how many of these projects I had lost, not because in particular, because I'm messy and with data, is because I cannot have the responsibility, for example, for the sustainability of those data. And many of the institutions, they didn't actually have a plan for maintenance and sustainability for those projects. Those projects at the end of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they produced knowledge. Through those projects, we produce knowledge. We produce our thoughts, we produce our reflections and theories and methodologies. So, but I publish now on the web. So it's very different from 76, 75, 76, 90s and 2000. We are publishing on the web, and this web has also changed. So how the web has become the technology, and we use the standards to shape our knowledge and to model our cultural heritage. So this is something that probably we need to think about. How can we also take back the projects that are now lost? Because in those projects, there are methods, methodologies, and theories that we probably need to reconstruct not only the cultural heritage in the digital environment, but also the production of the production of theories and methodologies that we are using even today. So data in humanities. Data in humanities is a big, perhaps never before, and also because of our use of technology today, we have overtaken our life with data. And humanities are built so closely bound to technology. I will move from theory to, in this speech, I will move from theories to practices to methodologies, because in a scholarly project, you cannot separate them. And it doesnit exist practice without having theories. It don't exist and doesn't exist methodologies without theories and practices. So over the years, methods, standards, and so methodology have changed, and it's also changed the way we operate. But so far, I just mentioned data in general or data in projects. We every time we think we start a project, we need to think of that an historical document will become a data. So data have quite of a broad general definitions. Data can be a variety of, there are a variety of typology of data. What kind of data are we talking about? And I would like to start also with more than answering questions, more than saying, let's have I will tell you what to do with the digital projects. I would actually raise questions. And raise questions is actually really important if there are now people that are working in the communities of practice of digital humanities. So first question is, what is the relationship, the relation between the data we have and our object of study? So does data replace books, paintings, and movies? Those are data are questions that are raised in the article of Big, Smart, Clean, Messy, Data in the Digital in the Humanities. So what difference does it make to analyze the digital representation of a version of a novel or a painting instead of a printed book or etc.? The other question is, what types of data are there in the digital humanities? What are the data? Because we have a variety of data here. What are the data that we are interested in and in manipulating them? And I will argue that one can distinguish two types of data, big data and also smart data. Those are the words of CCeH. What then does it mean to deal with big data or smart data? And the last question is, what new ways of dealing with data do we need to adopt in the humanities? So how can we also try to develop some best practices in digital humanities? Because obviously it's something that we really want to have as in my experience, I have been working for almost 7 years in projects in digital humanities. Some of them, they are not published. So the publishing part, say if the title is from modeling to publishing, the publishing probably, although they are probably almost ready to be published in terms of infrastructure, data modeling, data set, and queries, etc., they're probably not really enough to be published in terms of content. So those are two main things. On one side, there is the traditional humanities. On the other side, there is the technique, the methods, the methodologies. They're really banded together, but we collaborate with other people. So a team in digital humanities projects needs and require a team with different kind of skills and professionalities. So what are the if the digital humanities, with the words put in Elena Pierazzo, which contributed in the book of The Shape of Data in the Digital Humanities, edited by Julia Flanders and Fotis Yanidis. If the digital humanities, with their interdisciplinary position between humanities and computer science, seems to be invested with tasks of leading in the humanities into science, one may ask how this works in practice. Yeah, that's actually something that I thought that reading lots of books about the definition of digital humanities, reading lots of books about methodologies and theoretical framework, I could actually have the key of dealing with digital humanities in practice, but it's not. We still don't have a consensus of criteria to evaluate digital scholarly project, and at the same time, we still don't have a way, a vademecum, best practices to follow. So in fact, Elena Pierazzo said, in fact, we can call the digital humanities a discipline, but they are effectively characterized by a varied and ever-changing sets of methods and approaches. So we still have, on one side, we have lots of theories, on the other side, we have lots of methods, approaches, and technologies. So it is therefore necessary to look for a common defining ground, which is able, on one hand, to define the core of the discipline, and on the other, to fulfill the requirement of bringing to the rigor and the systematic and rigorous procedural methodologies characteristic of the science. So this is probably something that we need to, there are some of the issues raised by Elena Pierazzo that are quite important for a digital scholarly project in practice. Methodologies are related to what are so-called two cultures, as far as she said. But perhaps these two cultures are even fragmented in many other fields and in many other professionalities and in many other skills. So digital humanities are in the middle ground of this very eclectic field. That's the reason that there remains somewhat undefined. Or let's say that we probably have more people engaged in defining the field than practitioners. So sometimes feel that what I feel that, which is the praxis, the pragmatical, the projects that could define the digital humanities, they are in a way that sometimes they don't really fit in some of the definitions, because obviously there are digital humanities, digital scholarly projects can have different level of analysis. But the thing is, when many times when someone wants to work on a digital project, wants to start a digital project, they come to me and they say, "Oh, I have this idea." And but also with the students this year, I really try to structure the path from an idea to a model, but from the model to the practice, from the practice to the publishing the project. So what are the aspects to consider when you start a digital scholarly project? Why? Most of the times, humanists, they think that a digital project can be deal only from one person, instead of, you know, having multiple skills and so multiple people that are working on the same project. I mean, when I say different people working, I mean more people working in a digital project doesn't mean that in terms of developing the projects, but the main thing is, I mean, if you have the server, someone needs to be in charge of the server. If you have data modeling and a data set to work on, probably there are different skills. Sometimes a person can combine it, sometimes they cannot. So what are the short and long-term goals? How much time do you have? And planning data management is something that we miss as a digital humanist. Sometimes, obviously, I'm not saying that is a general thing, because even in the way how we practice digital humanities is very different among Digital Humanities Center, among people, researcher, programmers that are working on digital projects. So data management is something that we cannot always, it's not really clear how to do it. It's very clear that we need to study certain vocabularies or certain standards for the digital humanities, but we need to have also the capacity of managing those data and the life cycle of a data management. So identify potential data management problems is important, is the key, because otherwise at the end of the project, something that it was messy and not clean at the beginning, it can be really a problem at the end. And then risk and possibilities. Risk and possibilities will always, in every single stage of a digital humanities project, needs to be always reevaluated, and also need to, risks are really important to foresee at the beginning. Once you know the time you have, the collection of data you have, and what are the aims, and also, I mean, how can you define aims and goals for the project? And sustainability should be the key, the key of choosing technologies, should be the key of defining aims, and should be also the key of trying to reduce trying to exploit the reuse of data. So practice involves methods. Practice involves methods, and debates about methods are ultimately debates about our models. So what I learned from the beginning from Professor Giuseppe Gigliozzi, which was a pioneer in digital humanities during the 90s, And this year is going to be the 20th year of the loss of this important piece of a history of digital humanities. But he was always underlining the fact that models come from an hermeneutical perspective of the object of study. Hermeneutics a really interesting article written by D'Aquino Pasquale Tommasi, and that is on the references at the end of the slides. So you will have, and it's really important because they start this article on the knowledge representation of archives with the definition of digital hermeneutics. Hermeneutics, it plays a really important role in humanities in general. And as they said, the authors of this article said, scholars close read information sources with the purpose of inferring new knowledge, and by using logical approaches to deduce and to induce knowledge and interpretations. So to the best of our knowledge, we have, as they define, we have two kind of definitions of digital hermeneutics. On one hand, we refer to the critical use of digital sources in research inquiries. And on the other hand, the digital hermeneutics refers to the development of computational methods able to generate and validate hypotheses. So interesting, because once we have on the other side all those theories in mind, what can we do with the components of a digital scholarly project? So this is me working on digital humanities, and those are my stake notes. So what I always do in my life and my daily life for the last 6-7 years, maybe also before, is basically thinking of data modeling, infrastructure. First of all, an infrastructure. We need to know where to create this project. And also we need to have the right software and hardware on the server side, but also on the infrastructure to develop this project. So infrastructure and documentation is something that we never actually, maybe the infrastructure issue is is more, the digital humanities are more focused on infrastructures in terms of infrastructure to store and preserve our data, but also infrastructure that can think about methods and methodologies. But documentation, what about documentation? Why is it so difficult to also write or define the way of how to structure the documentation? I know best practices from software development. They obviously and from design patterns and all this techy stuff, they're actually giving us the opportunity to understand and also have a good write a good documentation, because we know digital scholarly projects are not only for one person. I worked on my own and on 2 digital projects. One in Cologne and one here. I mean, they are kind of finished projects, and I know that those projects are not mine. I mean, in terms of, I know that I wrote lots of code, but it's not going to be very visible, that code. So I'm part of the research, but at the same time, it's kind of the role of a DH researcher. Not very, that is not as good as the one in traditional humanities, but we are shaping the object of study. What I think, and this is a provocation obviously, but I think that digital humanities researcher cannot work on a digital project without studying the object of studying of the other colleagues, so of traditional humanities. So because once I come from data modeling, once I go to data modeling has to be shaped on the basis of your study, on the basis of hypothesis. Hypothesis comes from, obviously, a really deep analysis of the object of study. But data modeling needs to also be documented, because those data modeling needs to be in a way needs to be available and reused by other projects. If our data are not reused by other projects, or in a way that if they are not reused, probably we need to work a bit more. And that's actually what I'm doing with the BFLOP catalog, which is my kind of ongoing experiment since 2 years ago, since I started. So, but let's go on. I mean, as you can see, the components of a digital scholarly project is quite wide. We need to also have the possibility of knowing APIs, for example, by APIs that can export and expose data, or we need, and this is something that it has changed in the last few years, the data visualization. Data visualization is an issue, an important issue. I was in a conference with no digital humanist, and one of the main things of getting also wide the audience of our projects, because it has to be one issue, an important issue, trying to widen the audiences and the users for our digital humanities projects. It has to be a priority, and data visualization can help quite a lot, because on both researchers and people that are not engaged in a way with the object of study of their particular project. So UI and UX, also that thing. I mean, there are people that only study each of these particular components. How can a digital researcher can really have all of these skills? And database, and obviously, those are queries or retrieval. The search is obviously connected to the UI, but is not. So what I'm saying is that each component requires certain skills, and so I haven't actually gained all those skills in academia. So how can we actually do? How can we try to better engage our students to learn all of these things, or maybe just part of it? Anyway, so digital scholarly projects are research that is also research data-driven. I've been losing a bit of track, and are complex objects. So, the components that we saw in here, that obviously are, in this case, I obviously reduced I try to define components of a project, and they're not really also all of them. But there are digital scholarly projects are complex objects. are complex digital objects, are based on traditional research, and digital scholarly projects take more time than a traditional research project. This is a fact, because obviously combining ingesting the content within a project is obviously another parallel path and journey of researchers. So DHS need data management, best practice training, and this is something that I really think that is it is important. I mean, data can be many things. Data can have many formats. Data can be a large set of data. Data can be geographical data. Data can be metadata. Data can be also a Frankenstein that requires all of the components that I said it before. So data and humanities are digital, but most of them are also not. So what about this? I mean, those are all the components. If they are not digital, how can we also try to produce a digital scholarly project that actually can give the right representation of those projects? Humanities data are semiotic systems, and those there's a really great article written by Cristina Maras and Ariana Chula, published in 2006, which are they're talking on the fact that when we classify and when we are creating models, and the process of modeling, it requires a semiotic system. And I really think that the text in digital in a digital environment is a semiotic system, although obviously we're not going to the issue of textuality in digital humanities otherwise. So these are another article. I've just read so many articles to understand if it was also only my experience of working with it, or if actually some of the issues could actually be a common ground with other people working in digital humanities. So methods and methodologies. Unfortunately, I probably didn't. Yeah, I did. So this is an article about digital facsimile. So reproduction of what I was saying, that some of the data that we don't really have in on the digital environment in humanities, and those are actually peculiarities because they are reproduction, and those reproduction needs to be described and semantically described in a way that can be used for research projects. So the methodologies we are using mostly are byproduct of our praxis. In other words, we make what we have. This situation is partly a result of what can be termed as the inheritance model of digital humanities inquiry. What it says is we use all the components that I said it before, that we are basically mainly use third-party projects, third-party software, third-party standards. We are living in a world that we publish on the web, but the web is full of a myriad of languages and standards that we have to know to understand how to better shape our project on the web. And the web is something that we really cannot control. I mean, yes, there was in back in beginning of 2000 or late 90s when the Digital Humanities collaborated with the W3C because of the XML, because of the vocabulary or the TI vocabulary, and there was a collaboration, but now we are not at the moment, and we probably have to. We have to think that we're using something that is produced by someone else, or corporation, or organization, or other academics, but they're not our languages, they're not our products. The inheritance model means that the tools of digital humanities used in the early stages of the field and partly to this day have mostly been created for the purpose very different than the study of the past. There are, of course, exceptions to the tools inherited from other disciplines. So what it means is that the situation has led to a creation of mixed methodology, which try to use tools not necessarily made to perform a particular task. So what I'm saying in here is that a DH researcher, I expect a DH researcher I'm not saying most of those things, but at least have an understanding of what is, and because if the medium is the message, as McLuhan said, we probably need to understand what are our methodologies, what are the methodologies that are creating on the mixed up when we meet the technology, or if the digital humanities only one thing, and we're also trying to create the softwares and tools that can better shape our purposes. But still, data management is one of the things that I really think that is something that we don't. I mean, as digital humanists, we are lack of the skills of data management. Although, as you can see, I mean, probably it's not. But the Daria, the infrastructure, Daria has many as a really great tutorial about data management that we can use. But planning, organizing, storing, and sharing data and other research results and product. So. What can we do? I mean, how can we plan collecting? I mean, the first thing is obviously planning and organizing data. When we say okay, what can I? I mean, the first question that I'm actually always asked is, what can I do with this? And I always step back when they say, oh, what can I do? How can I create a digital scholarly edition? I'm always I know, but I don't know, because obviously first thing is collecting materials, and then organizing these materials in a way that you want to, that is really good for also for sustainability of this data. Messy data will not bring to sustainability, and it will be a risk of the durability of the project. So data structure is very late. I'm just thinking, okay, what are the other main questions? So data modeling is data structure that correspond to our intuition about the intellectual organization of the data. So modeling is a creating process to gain new knowledge. So if we have what can we think about the heuristic strategies of a digital project? So first thing is what I'm always say and is a phrase I used to say, and I actually stole from another person, that divide timbre, divide and get power on the data. Abstraction and granularity needs to be the basic of our data modeling, and data elements whose level of abstraction and granularity matches that our domain of analysis, and overall architecture in which making the information connections required for analysis is simple and direct, rather than requiring elaborating extremely indirect transversal. So data modeled in this way is likely to be easier to document, to explain, and to program. So this is one of the, once we get into the data modeling, what we need to think is a way to distribute, to abstract and create components that can document it in each component, and that can also be flexible to be expanded or to reduce content. So checklist for digital outputs assessment. This is a really, I found really useful, the checklist for digital outputs, because obviously it can be, and I also think that more checklists needs to be done in order to have a proper scholarly project. When we talk about scholarly, it doesn't have to be only traditional scholar, but also in the side of technology. So checklists are the checklist for the digital humanities at the Digital Humanities Center at King's College. I think it is really useful. Was published in 2019, so it is quite good. I just go ahead a bit further up because I want to talk about the standards, and I want to raise one main thing. I will leave the other issues I had in mind for this talk. Standards. We work with standards. Standards are really important, and standards is been also the effort of many other digital humanists to create a vocabulary like the TI, for example. Standards are important because standards are also related to the web. So we find metadata, but also protocols. There are standards. Standards are important to communicate as important as for the interoperability and to create also the usability of data. But standards can also be for communities. So, for example, a standards de facto development for frameworks or database technologies. So, a standard de facto, for example, I would say that it can be XSDB, which is a great XML database, and for example, I would actually provoke and trying to stimulate the discussion for later for those who are software developers. Infrastructure like, for example, Cadmus. What about, once a community core practice are using some tools, some frameworks, some databases, can be also feel in the realm of the standards de facto, or what I so-called standard de facto. So, but what are the risks on this? In the first in the first one, ExistDB, which probably some of you know because is very, they developed a tool called the TI Publisher. So I invite anyone that wants to use the tool to use it. I'm not saying, but the risk is there is this tool, this platform it was developed and it's been developed, actually has been developed by a group of people. So what about if they don't want to maintain this infrastructure? What about those data? And obviously, we can talk about also for Cadmus. But how about those that created the framework won't be there tomorrow for many other reasons? I mean, winning the lottery or doesn't I don't really care about the reason, but what about once we have standard de facto, we probably have to be responsible all together, DH centers, community, infrastructure like Daria and others, not only about the data set and the data, but also think of all those resources that have been developed with those data. So I wanted to talk about, because in few days, in a few weeks, we are going to launch the vFlow projects, which is a project that I have been working a lot for more than 2 years, and I'm really proud of the team and how anyway what is the result and the output of the. So if we think about this project, which is, I mean, the CCeH was the one in Cologne, the Magica Levantina that is not in the slides. But for the vFlow projects, let's go and check as final part of this talk. Let's check about the architecture and design the project. How many components do we have in this project? We have an API that the ROS is exposed the data and the model via REST API. So we need to, I mean, in this case, people need to know what is a REST API. Otherwise, you won't be able not only to expose data, but also to connect your data with other projects, obviously through computer, not by a human side. But so it's a database with MySQL. So I had to learn MySQL. Yes, okay, I couldn't have known before, but I had to know the language PHP. But the PHP had an API platform with Symfony, which is another important component of this project. So I had to learn all these things because I didn't, and I actually I like challenges. So and I like learning more computer languages, and because I think it is really important. But the architecture and design of the project, still the front end, the design and usability. The role of the website as a static pages, host on GitHub, and yes, I use Jekyll, and I actually didn't put on the server in the University of Venice server, the data center. I published it, and it's still on GitHub, so I could do it, and I did. It was a shortcut for me. I mean, and it was something that I still have doubts, but because also I'm working on my own on these projects, so it's really difficult to understand if I do the right choice or not. So language as JavaScript to read and send data to the API component. And more, there is an admin, there is an ontology, and RDF. I'm always really scared of showing to people because I know there are lots of great ontologists out there in the digital humanities field that can check and see what I have done. And because I think that data modeling is at the core of the activity of digital humanities, I also think that yes, I can learn JavaScript, I can learn React, I can learn every of these software and computer languages, but at the end of the day, what I really need to know is how to model a topic in humanities, and through the standards and the languages and the frameworks that the web is giving us. So those are basically from Antonio Foscari is the director of this project, and the ideator of this project. So when he came, he just gave me this dossier, and then, I mean, to go there and to have all these components, it was kind of a really hard work. Okay, last but not least, values and open data. I had many things to say on this purpose, but I would actually say that I'm still believing in the fact that open source are important because of the fact that is we can read the code, language and coding will define the message, and I need to know what is written behind it. I need to know, and I need to access also the content in it with the open access license. But we can think about it also later. Then, I mean, in the discussion. Collaboration and communities of practices. Collaboration and communities of practice are the main keys. We also the main, I mean, one of the part of the conclusion that I was thinking in the last few days, it was we need to collaborate with the DH centers. We need more communication among people that they are working on digital projects. Why do I say that? Because I believe in communities of practices. Otherwise, every time we reinvent the wheel, or every time I will do my own project, and I will create probably a data set that is not really useful for other projects. So communication, I mean, communities of practices are really important, and we need to create infrastructure for it. And one of the high risk in the maintainability of the project, which technology has been chosen, will it be supported, developed, and maintained in the next 15, 20 years? Yes, it seems very long time, but probably I would also say at least 10 years. And this is important. I mean, do we rely in third-party components? All the JavaScript. I mean, I remember the Elena Pierazzo once said to me, it is actually better if you encode with XML and you just have a very simple HTML page. HTML started at the middle of 90s and is still there, but not other things. I mean, JavaScript, libraries in JavaScript are they are not really reliable sometimes. So you need to maintain the project. How can you? I mean, the one it was obviously a simple answer saying, yeah, I know that a project is composed of many things, but let's try to simplify it, but have the project forever. I mean, and forever, we know that in computer science won't be a forever. And that's it, basically. I mean, I won't go further because otherwise we're gonna open more yeah, other issues, actually, the sustainability that I tackle at the beginning. I'm just saying this thing because there's another very interesting article on sustainability in the digital scholarship in humanities. And what they say is the cost of digital scholarship are frequently posed in terms of human labor and rights abuses, ecological and environmental damages, carbon footprints, waste of resources associated with obsolescence, and other issues that affect every stage of the life cycle of production. But sustainability also needs to be understood as an epistemic concept, embedded in complex systems, not merely as a set of problems to be solved through instrumental means applied to operational logistics. Yeah, that's the last but not least. Again, another one is the DH researchers are not only problem solving or people that are just creating projects in a formal way. What we need to think is obviously the layers of meaning and expressivity of textuality in the digital environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tiziana, for this very big picture that you showed us, the panopticon of digital humanities enterprise. So you touched on so many issues on the ecosystem, the skills, the credits of the DH expert, modeling standards, the architectures, the design, the license project issue, communities of practice, sustainability. So everyone is now very much invited to touch or to ask on any of these aspects, and there were many more, and there would be much more in your slides that you didn't show. Questions to make comments on this on these issues. So this is an interdisciplinary seminar. Any questions are allowed here, and yeah, many of these issues have been more like opening a horizon of questions. So very welcome also to switch on your video. It's always nice for the discussion, but you don't have to. And you can raise your hand using the raise your hand button, or type your question into the chat, and or I can just give you the voice if you say you have a question in the chat. I don't find the chat actually. Where's the chat? Okay, here. And I see Daniel raising your hand.
Thank you, Tiziana. I've learned a lot from this seminar, but I feel a little uncomfortable with this common definition of digital humanities as the data, the turn of the humanities towards data. So my own background is in classical Latin philology, and it surely matters a lot for our field that it's not too big. So all the classical Latin texts would probably fit into one. All the texts that survive would probably fit into one bookcase, and they would definitely fit into a room in some edition, all the texts in at least one edition. So human researchers have been working for centuries on this limited corpus of data. And actually, I was thinking that I have here the Oxford Latin Dictionary, which is one of the books I use every day, and that was made from, well, in the second half of the 20th century, after World War II, on paper as a data-driven project. So researchers read through a given part of classical Latin literature, and then they wrote down the words on paper and then systematized the entries. And at the end of this process is this massive dictionary. And I wonder, with digital humanities, I always wonder, are we creating new ways for filing data? So new, more imaginative, more ambitious, more useful ways for storing data? Or are we also creating new ways of manipulating the data? And I would love to see the second, or rather, I would love to see more of the second. I would love to see computerized studies of language and automatized studies, more than a trivial search function, more profound than a trivial search function, to study, well, the texts of classical Latin literature and many other interesting fields of study. So that would be my challenge to the field.
You know, while I was checking your video, I saw Raffaele Viglianti that I wanted to quote, and I couldn't. I mean, then at some point I just left the paper I wrote. He quoted in a lecture he gave in December, and unfortunately I don't have it here anyway. So he quoted Julia Flanders, and if I remember well, but he's here in just in case, but if I remember well, he said the way, I mean, manipulation, and obviously the manipulation is really important. That's also why all these components. I just wanted to show basically how many skills a DH researcher needs to have, and also how many skills that is not taken for granted sometimes, that you really need to, I mean, you really need to engage with the web technologies in order to have it and to manipulate data in the right way. But how can you transform your data, your analogical data, into digital data? And Flanders said that you need to be constrained. I mean, he used the word measurable. It needs to be, obviously, what you need to do is formalize and create a way to retrieve those data, to count those data. As I said it at the beginning when I was talking about the videos. So what about those data? I mean, we are producing content, but what about, I mean, it's not producing content actually. I mean, it's just a video on YouTube. And to manipulate those data, we need to have a layer on interpretation. That's why I really think that it's really important, the digital hermeneutics that Tomasi, D'Aquino, and Pasquale, they were talking about. And it's really important also to understand how this process of formalization needs to be in practice in order to create also. But it's not enough, because obviously on top of it, there are other layers and other standards. And standards are not only the XML. So how about if a digital humanities need to, you know, create a digital project? It's not enough what we learn. That's what what we learn in or probably not. It's more related to probably to data science. It's more related to artificial intelligence nowadays. It's changing. The paradigm is changing again. I mean, we saw different phases of the digital humanities since I've been working on digital humanities since at the end of the 90s. We have seen the differences, but we need to learn from the past, and we need to also try to understand how to deal with the future.
Grazie mille.
Federico. your microphone. I can do
okay. Yeah, thank you. I would know in this big vision, which is, in your opinion, the role of the infrastructures?
There are a few slides actually that the role of the infrastructure are absolutely important. I think we really need to, I mean, it's one of the, if you see also the literature in digital humanities, you actually see that many are the articles on this topic. Infrastructure are an issue, has been an issue for many years, although they didn't actually work. This is obviously my opinion. They haven't worked properly in terms of not losing the projects of the past, of the digital humanities in the past. For example, I mean, how many projects we lost? So how about those infrastructure? What is the role also to recover not only to maintain and preserve data now, I mean, in this moment, but how can you actually recover also data from the past? And sometimes there are closed formats, or sometimes they can be with our hardware and software that they are not running anymore. And so we probably have to think of, that's why I started talking about born digital archives. Not archives, but whatever we can think, but we need to think about it. I mean, we need to think about also an infrastructure that can, where we can access digital humanities projects that they're not probably anymore maintained from, no longer maintained from the departments or institutions that developed them.
Thank you.
Antonio, nice to see you. Ah, there you are.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, thank you, Tiziana. I think you gave a very the big picture, and I think you talk about a lot of important issues like sustainability, etc. But I would like to ask you about collaboration and the human aspect of it, and if you could talk about how difficult it is to collaborate.
There are a few slides I didn't want to mention. I mean, let's talk about the pedagogical aspects that we do every day. So, I mean, pedagogical in terms of trying to let humanists understand what are they, you know, what is the procedure of working with. And sometimes I do tricks. For example, the model I choose for the ontology in the catalog is more or less the way how I structured the admin to ingest, to add content for people that for the researchers, the students that don't know anything about, you know, digital humanities, so they could actually understand what are the dependence, the relations among the elements. So the pedagogical aspects and the training that we do is very tiring. And this is something that we need to consider in the team. I mean, collaborating also with different in the interdisciplinary projects. There was a slide also interdisciplinary intersectionality, because I also think that this is obviously sharing skills is one of the main tasks for us, I guess. And the other, I mean, I really think that we need to make an effort to more collaborate, create more, don't know, I mean, what is how we could do, but we need to probably collaborate a little bit more in terms of domain-specific knowledge. So and try to create more communities of practices. And yeah, that's what I think, but I don't know if I'm not really, because I'm not a social animal. So and I don't know if it's me or
Okay, you are raising your thumb, Antonio, so that means even though you weren't able to raise your actual question, Tiziana anticipated your question, so that and had the right answer.
yeah.
No, you know how to communicate.
That I'm actually, I didn't raise also the thing of intersectionality, but it's always in my mind. I mean, intersectionality is also an issue that consider technologies are non-neutral, and this is. I think one of the first approach that we have to have in mind when we create a project. They are non-neutral and they can hide, subjectivities and people that and in the universal model of technologies, in those entropy of data, they can really be invisible. And we always have to be, always have to have in mind that we need to be inclusive. We need to create, and we need to have digital methods that are inclusive. I didn't put the slide on purpose on the first principles, for example. I was really excited until I read the article by Antonio Rocas yesterday, and I thought, okay, maybe I need to think a little bit about fair principle a bit more, but and how unequals are probably and I will leave it. So they reuse the interoperability and everything. I just step back and I need to reflect a little bit more. And yeah.
Tiziana, go ahead. Yeah. Somebody.
No, I suggest them to read the article by Antonio.
On the fair principles. Okay, it's not.
Yeah, and there are the slides also that they're really. I mean,
you will share your full slides on our GitHub repository. So okay, that's good. So the recording will be available on YouTube, and the full set of slides with all the references, including the reference to Antonio Riojas and his article on fair principles. I didn't know that there was that article. Oh, it seems to be interesting. Okay. More questions, suggestions. So this feels like a team meeting, and to develop the idea and concepts of our center and make plans for the future. So any contribution is most welcome here. I think we are moving towards 6:30, but for some
Daniele.
Daniele, you have a question?
Yeah.
Daniele, and then Rafael.
Okay, just something which was left out in the slides because of time. In praise of practitioners who are relatively few among many theorists, we need both, but that's more like a chemical solution, so you can distinguish among the original ingredients. And now in VeDPH, methods are often heavily affected by methodologies, as you said. Just think about how physical modeling is often confused with logical modeling. So theory here is side to side with practice, and the inverse is true too, because we can just hire an IT person and say that's DH. That's a sort of fundraising trick nowadays, but as Plato said, many bear the Tirsus, but few are really Bacchoi. And in this context, it's difficult to train students in traditional ways. And in fact, most DH courses push the workshop model where students somehow become practitioners too. So what's your teaching experience in filling this gap?
Yeah, it is actually, there's always there. I mean, every time I teach, I try to concentrate on a specific aspect and then try to also give an overview of everything. Like the data modeling course that we had here in Venice, I really try to show through technologies some of the definitions that you might hear quite a lot, like metadata, interoperability, etc. So I'm always trying to combine the theory and the practice. And what I would do in terms of, and probably, you know, the way how I do is wrong. I'm not saying that is something that is fine, but I always trying to show the complexity on a digital object. So if, for example, I mean, first thing is sometimes I also trying to teach some command line, because I know that if they work with a server just to install WordPress, they need to have kind of an idea or how it works, a command line. So even if I say two things of one piece and the other, I try to give the architecture that, you know, the architecture that is composed on many aspects. And that's basically, but I'm not sure. And I really would like to also know what is the experience of other people. I mean, obviously that I can learn a lot from all of you, probably.
Thank you.
I thought that you were talking about the Cadmus provocation.
Hello. Thank you, Tiziana. It was very interesting, and I agree with pretty much everything you said, both in terms of, you know, the importance of theory and modeling over practice, and finding communities of practice, and being able to know about the content that you're going to work with, and not just sort of be a technologist, right? I think that a lot of us practitioners in the digital humanities are lucky enough to inhabit that space, and that's why we're here. I wanted to reflect a little bit more on infrastructure, because I think that, you know, the takeaway that I'm getting here is that, you know, infrastructure is important and essential to make sure that the resources that we create continue to exist in the future. But I'm still not quite sure, like, what you think is the best way of doing that. And perhaps I'm curious to, like, hear your opinion about, you know, infrastructure-oriented initiatives, especially in Europe. I don't know, things like TextGrid or Daria, and how you see those working towards that goal. Do you think they have a future in 30 years from now, really? And if not, what's wrong and what should we do instead? What about a sort of global perspective where, you know, even when I work in the United States, thinking about state-sponsored infrastructure is a non-starter, or places where, you know, that is also a non-starter, but also spinning your own infrastructure, even at university level, is near impossible. Does that mean that they shouldn't do DH because they can't preserve the digital content they're putting out, or they need to do it differently? Well, is there a solution here, or do we just need to continue reinventing ourselves in order to keep things alive, and we might just lose some in the way?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it includes probably every doubt and every discussion I had with other people that are working on digital projects, but not in digital humanities. So one thing it was, okay, if you don't have infrastructure, there's an internet archive. You can do a snapshot and put on internet archive. So yeah, obviously there's a there is an issue. I mean, sustainability is quite and not really secure issue aspect of the digital humanities. We don't have to stop, obviously, doing it. I mean, I personally think that everything that during the 80s, especially during the 80s, when the personal computers, the advent of the personal computers, in digital humanities was really alive, and they produce knowledge and they produce thoughts. I mean, the thoughts of, I mean, storia delle idee. How can you concepts, hermeneutics. So there was a theoretical framework there that most of them they use also in business industry, and I mean industry, the cultural industry or other. So it's not, we don't have to stop doing it, but we still, I really would like to know those projects during the 80s that I read about. In some of the articles, not even, because some volumes during the 80s that are not there anymore. I mean, you really need to go in some libraries and find when Segre and other philologists and discussed and argue about the end of technologies in 1979. So there's probably some things that we need to recover, just to study, not to obviously to have it there, but it's kind of a preservation. I really think the infrastructure needs to be on domain specific. So that can be, instead of digital humanities, that is too vague. This term infrastructure needs to be probably also contextual in space, but we probably need more digital archives anyway. We need to think. We really need to think seriously on it. That's what I think. I mean, we still don't have it. So probably the main thing is to try to find a good place in internet archive, probably. But there's Clarion as well, and Clarion seems working at the moment, and I really want to trust them. That's another thing, that we probably infrastructure are also are there because there are people, and we need to take responsibility as Digital Humanities Center, at departments, and at people, and as people that are working in digital humanities.
Thank you.
Daniel, you have another question, or is this? Yeah.
And add on that a friend of mine is working at the Royal Library of the Netherlands in The Hague, and they have a very conscious project to archive actually huge chunks of the Dutch internet and the historical internet, so the internet as it was 10 years ago or even earlier, but also as it is now, in order to create material for future researchers. And I hope that this very broad, very wide net that they are casting will also catch out valuable digital projects. But I think it's really, really sensible to just to save Facebook posts and Instagram posts and whatever as a memory of our time. I think that's a very, very good project.
Okay. Yeah, let's organize also some conferences only on the digital projects part.
Franz, you're muted.
Hi, Adele. Adele Cipolla is full professor from University of Verona. That was just that's it. Oh, Ellie.
Oh, I keep talking to Ellie Milona. I'm sorry, I was muted. I was talking to you all the time. So please, Ellie, yeah.
Hi there. Tiziana, thank you so much. This was a great talk and really on point with a lot of topics that I think are super important, and which I just loved hearing you say these things that about sort of data as modeling and the sort of the simplicity of the model being sort of the way that you can understand the theoretical approach to the whole research question. But I had a question and a comment or two. This actually I have about 7 comments, but we don't have time for that because there was so much to think about. The first question is, you seem to state in the beginning, and then you came back and talked about knowledge creation, almost as if it were the kind of thing that came out of the digital humanities of the mid-90s, and you didn't really, I don't understand, I didn't get the, are you differentiating the type of knowledge creation and representation that happens in the mid-90s with the advent of the personal computer from what we used to call humanities computing? So that's the question. And then some of my comments have more to do with pushing a little bit at you about the notion of when you rely on other tools and this idea of fearing or, the risk of relying on other people's tools, third-party tools, even tools created for other purposes. When, in a sense, as we talk about infrastructure, I mean, it's infrastructure all the way down, right? It depends, you're always relying on somebody else's tools. They might change the microchip and the compiler won't work anymore. This is what happened to Brown's Intermedia. So you can't ever not rely on it. And it seems to me that taking advantage of some of those things. So the question is, do you roll your own or do you use TI Publisher? Well, if you have data that is well modeled, maybe TI Publisher is good enough. So those questions are great questions for discussion, because I take your point a lot about knowing your own tools and being able to roll your own tools. And finally, just preservation as having kind of a sustainability as an epistemic concept. Love that. I'd love to hear more about it at some point. It kind of captures one of the big problems about preservation, which is why you preserve it. But anyway, I leave you my question.
Yeah, no, okay. I need another hour, but
I'm sorry. Yeah, I know that.
No, I'm joking. I'm I'm happy that actually also probably at the end I was rushing because I checked the time and I didn't check my notes anymore and blah blah. So, but first thing, did we change our methods and methodologies from the 90s? I mean, from 90s? I think yes. I mean, I worked with, back in the days, with Giuseppe Gigliozzi and Fabio Ciotti on some digital libraries. And I remember the first time, and it was my first year at the BA in Rome, first time that I attended an XML workshop. And we were working with SGML. I would say that we didn't change in terms of hermeneutics, in terms of probably the close reading and the analysis of the object of study, but we have other technologies. And we think the syntax of XML is different from the syntax of an RDF. So in that way, we need to think about the text, textuality in different ways. And we need to think, I mean, the way how we were thinking of text, it was just really concentrated only on text. Now, we have this need of find resources and connect resources to the outside world. I mean, still the web. But we really need to find also more media, more text in terms of images, sounds, videos all together. Otherwise, the user will be bored. I mean, obviously it's not, but it's kind of the need, but we were focusing really only on our text, and now on a corpus of texts. And now we actually change also the textualities and this is one thing, but there are other many aspects that I can think of. Relying on other tools is not that we don't have to work with that tools. We need to acknowledge the risk. We need to know once we choose the technology, what is the risk? So we know, even, I mean, I would actually write on the documentation. So the next person that is working on my project, on what it was my ex project, that actually know all the risk I thought. So that's probably this is sustainability. Sustainability is also aware of what is the advantages or the disadvantages of the technologies I'm using. Sustainability is also preservation in terms of model. Model can be reused. I mean, FRBR is not something that was is not invented as RDF, but it is still used. That's why models will be preserved. Probably the digital project. No, although I really would like to see some of the projects, because I know that, I mean, at some point I wanted to read the Susan Hockey the handbook on COBOL, but then I thought it's better that I don't go there. But because obviously there is another logic. What kind of logic there was behind it? What kind of, I mean, what led some people, working on the project in that way? Obviously, also the formal language.
Snowball, I think. Not COBOL, right? Because I was thinking about that when you were talking about languages. It's the one that does that was written for humanities texts. The language. Yeah, no, that's very
because
cool.
I'm always joking with now I'm tired. And it came up. The term of preservation is also the role of the archivist. And the today there was the parallel to this discussion, also the presentation of a book that I really want to read, Uncertainty and Archived Uncertainty. Anyway, so what is archived, or what is unarchived, or what can be selected for the archive, or what is not, is something that obviously is the role of the archivist. This is something that obviously is the selection of materials is also something that should be, in a way, decided from the various born digital archives that should be in the future.
Can I ask you a question?
Please, Mary, you have the honor to raise the last question. Please go ahead.
Oh, the one I was writing.
Ah.
Okay. Sorry, the last question. Oh, well, they say thank you.
That's fine. I mean, that's brilliant dramaturgy here.
Okay, Tiziana, thank you for a really wonderful talk. It's really illuminating. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts, because I have seen a lot of work that was in the 90s and in the 80s, and it's all been lost. and it's not accessible anymore. And we will always have a dependency on third-party platforms. And they have really got no, I suppose, they've no goal to preserve data or make data accessible in the long term. In fact, their remit is the exact opposite. So I'm wondering, who has a responsibility? You know, if we generate data, if we generate from research or from different outcomes, and if we're working with people who perhaps don't understand the complexities of the infrastructures, who has the responsibility for storing that information and making sure that it's available in the future? Nobody at the moment, but you know, what should we be looking for?
Communities of practices.
Yes.
Yeah. It's really important. I mean, and we go back to infrastructures. The debate is still open on this thing, because obviously infrastructure. I mean, just to clarify, when we talk about infrastructure, we talk about many different things.
Yeah.
We can talk about the infrastructure of the University of Venice, the asset, the data center, and the servers, and we can think about infrastructure that will preserve our data. We can, I mean, infrastructure can be the infrastructure, also the environment where we develop our software. But who is going to be? I mean, probably. I mean, we learn from our mistakes. This is a thing. I mean, I guess there's another change that we have seen in the last few years. The publishing data set, something that we probably 20 years ago, it wasn't really common. It wasn't really common to put, for example. So they're now becoming part of our cultural heritage. So it's true the infrastructure can be done, but I would probably say that we really need to rely on communities of practices, because if it's only you that have this problem, it's going to be a really big problem for you. If the same problem was made by other projects, probably is something that also collectively can deal with. I don't have actually an answer on this. And that's also the reason why I think that we need to also have more discussion on practices and digital projects in practice. Yep. Because I feel very isolated sometimes. I mean,
I think you're right, and I'm not asking you for a big answer, but I just want to pose that it's an ongoing problem to which there is no solution.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody is even really interested.
Yeah, although I guess the open source is really important. Now, working with closed software, it is really important, and it is kind of an issue in infrastructure, because you can actually, I mean, but when I say open, it has to be everything open. The libraries that you use, everything that you can think about, but still you are not secure.
Tiziana, thank you very, very much for this really insightful presentation. And I really hope we as an institution, as a community, as a team will be able to contribute to the further development of institutions, technologies, practices to preserve, maintain, enrich, and provide data and models. And I think this level of reflection is really necessary on a regular basis. So maybe next year we should repeat your talk, and we will be hopefully on a different level, or have advanced, or the field has advanced. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for participants, for the audience, for the excellent questions. This is not over yet, so we have a grande finale in 2 weeks, the last presentation of our series in Digital and Public Humanities, presented by Daniel Kiss, who also participated in today's discussion. And this will be then an excellent continuation of this discussion and reflection on the very impact on a discipline, on Latin. And he will talk on Catullus Online and Digital Latin, Radical Innovation or Media Change. So same place, same hour in 2 weeks. And we are busy planning our autumn cycle program, which will probably not by then be published, but soon over the summer you will get notice of what I'm sure will be an exciting another cycle of seminars. So I'm very, very happy and satisfied with today's and the past presentation. I look forward to meet you all again, hopefully in 2 weeks. Thank you. Thank you also for those working in the background. Elisa just showed up, so she's doing the recording and keeps everything under control. Thank you very much, Elisa, and the organizers, and first and foremost to Tiziana for this very, very instructive talk. Thank you.